Today we're heading to one of Japan's most iconic and beautiful spots, the island of Miyajima. You probably know it for its incredible shrines and super friendly wild deer. But beneath that picture-perfect surface, a really serious problem is washing ashore. All right, let's get into it.
You know, when you think of a UNESCO World Heritage Site, you're imagining these totally pristine, untouched landscapes, right? But what if I told you there's this hidden tide of waste that's threatening this very place? The story of what's happening on Miyajima, well, it's a perfect snapshot of a huge global issue. So let's start right there, on the shores of this sacred island. How does a place so famous for its natural beauty end up with such a massive marine debris problem? What's going on?
Well, it turns out it's kind of the perfect storm of three things. You've got the geography of the sea itself, the island's biggest industry, and the very thing that makes its coastline so beautiful. All these things actually work together to trap a ton of trash.
First up, let's talk geography. The Seto Inland Sea basically acts like a giant bathtub with a tiny drain. It's almost completely surrounded by land, so any waste that comes from the superpopulated coastlines, we're talking household plastics, industrial stuff, you name it, it gets in, but it has a really hard time getting out. It just swirls around and builds up.
And we can get super specific about where this trash is coming from. Just look at the data from Hiroshima Prefecture. Over half of it, a whopping 50.3%, is from fishing activities. Think styrofoam floats and plastic pipes from all the oyster farms in the area. Then, another 26.7%, that's just regular old plastic waste from our homes. The big takeaway here, this isn't a problem from far away, it's being created right on their doorstep.
Okay, so let's zoom out from Miyajima for a minute and look at the bigger picture, because this local story is really just one chapter in a massive global crisis. The problem there isn't unique. It's a symptom of what's happening in our oceans all over the planet.
So, what exactly are we talking about when we say marine debris? Well, the UN defines it as any persistent solid material generated by human activity. The two key words there are persistent, meaning it sticks around, and human activity. Yeah, this isn't natural stuff. This is our stuff. And most of it is plastic, which we can break down into three main categories.
First, you've got the stuff we see the most, beached debris. These are all the bottles, the bags, and the junk that washes up on our shores, ruining the view and harming wildlife.
Then there's the floating debris. This is the stuff that just drifts on the ocean currents. It's the world traveler of trash. A plastic bottle dropped in one country can literally end up on a beach thousands of miles away, on a completely different continent.
And finally, there's the hidden threat, the stuff you don't see, seabed debris. This is the heavy junk that sinks to the bottom, old fishing nets, tires, all sorts of plastics, and it just smothers marine habitats, basically creating dead zones on the ocean floor.
So how on earth do we get to this point? This timeline just lays it all out. The story really kicks off in the 1950s. That's when mass production and our love for convenient, disposable, plastic everything just exploded. And that has put us on a path to a truly terrifying forecast.
I want you to just let that sink in for a second. Read it again. If we keep going the way we are, in less than 30 years, the ocean could contain more plastic than fish by weight. This isn't just a small environmental issue. This is a full-blown crisis for the health of our entire planet.
And the consequences of this plastic tide? They're not some far-off problem. We are already feeling them. There's a really high price to pay for our throwaway culture, and it's a lot more than just ugly beaches.
The whole issue really boils down to three core things about plastic waste. It travels everywhere and never really goes away, and it's incredibly hard to deal with once it's out in the wild.
And here's the absolute key difference. If you toss an apple core, it biodegrades. It returns to the earth. Plastic? It doesn't. It just breaks down into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces called microplastics. These tiny fragments get everywhere, into the food chain, into our water, and yep, even into us.
And this has real-world impacts that you can see and feel. It wrecks beautiful landscapes, which hurts economies that depend on tourism, just like Miyajima. It costs people money when it gets tangled in fishing nets or jams up ship propellers. And, like we said, it suffocates the seabed, killing off entire ecosystems where life just can't survive anymore.
Okay, after all that bad news, I know it would be so easy to just feel completely overwhelmed, but the story doesn't end there. The last and honestly the most important part of this whole thing is about what we can actually do. It's about how we can start to turn this tide together. And the solutions? They start with really simple actions that we can all take, that add up to make a huge difference. Think of these as 5 promises we can make. Just say no to single-use plastics when you can. Obviously, don't litter. If you see trash on the ground, just pick it up. Talk about this stuff with your friends and family. And let's try to reuse things instead of just throwing them away. And this quote brings us right back to where we started. In Miyajima, the efforts there to not only clean up the trash, but to actually turn it into new products, that's the spirit we need. This isn't just about cleaning up a mess. It's about changing our whole relationship with the stuff we use. It's about learning, it's about adapting, and it's about giving our planet a second chance. The only question left is, are we ready to do it?